Hi, this video is about layout panes. So in JavaFX, we have different kinds of layouts we can use for laying out our content. So layout panes are just a way of organizing our content in a specific way. And there are 8 different kinds of organizings you can use or pane types that you can use. And these are the 8 types. There is the VBox, the HBox, there's TilePane, FlowPane, GridPane, StackPane, BorderPane, and AnchorPane. And they all have different usages, and I'll try to explain the different usages for these. So some of them are very simple, and some of them are very hard to use. So let's start with the most simply used one, the AnchorPane. In a previous video, I used this AnchorPane here for actually doing something like having the basic setup was the AnchorPane in the program that I had created. So if you look in the sample FXML, my root pane is the AnchorPane. The AnchorPane, you can think of that as like a billboard or something like that. So what you can actually do with the AnchorPane is you can simply just create a point somewhere on the AnchorPane. Let's go for a brush. So I can say in this point here, I'm just going to specify the X and Y coordinate for that specific thing I'm going to put here. And I can put any node here. So in my previous videos, you know what a node is. So I could put something here, like I could put a button here. So I could have a button here. Looks like an E button. And that button would then have its upper left corner exactly at that X and Y value. So this is pretty easy because you can really fast specify, I want this size button, I need to put it there. And you can probably imagine that it's very easy to create a layout. You put things here, 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 and then you can write some text and you can make like in checkboxes and whatever you want to do. It's very free for you to do that. But there is one big drawback of the AnchorPane, and that is that in real life, especially nowadays, people have different systems. So JavaFX will also be able to run on your mobile phone, and it will be able to run on small screens and big screens and low resolution, high resolution. So for example, I'm running this right now on a 4K screen. So if I make it very small, let's say that the button is only like 100 times 40 pixels or something, then actually it will be extremely small on my screen. So I won't be able to see the button at all. If I have a very low resolution screen, like an old computer or a very old mobile phone, the button might be very, very big, and the program or the scene that holds the AnchorPane won't fit at all on my computer. So there is different ways you can actually do that. You can ask, in Java, you can ask the screen resolution. You can see how many pixels are there available on the screen. And then you can start calculating how big the AnchorPane should be. So let's say you have a small mobile phone, then you put the AnchorPane like this, and you have like a big 4K screen. Then you want to put it like this, and then you have like a small old like 4x3 screen, and you want to put it like this. So it sounds pretty easy. If you know the size of the screen, you can just calculate the relative size of the AnchorPane, and that is pretty simple. But then now comes the next problem. What about the button here? You also need to recalculate the size for that. That is easy here, probably also easy here. But here now the screen is in another orientation, and it's so it doesn't even help to go like this because it's still much wider So we have a problem here. We need to recalculate everything. And this is where the AnchorPane fails. It's not able, you can do this, but it's a lot of work recreating everything like that. So this is why you can't just use the AnchorPane for everything, although it seems pretty nice to do that because it's so easy to work with. I set up everything scene builder. I just drag and drop and drag it around and it looks pretty good. And I can show an example of this just simply by opening the program, and we can see that right now it does scale, but the buttons are kind of fixed like that. So if I have a big screen, the button is still small. If I have a small screen, the buttons are still small. So there's no reason for us to start recalculating everything. If you have yourself in a situation like that, you're not doing it right. You should be using some other kind of pane. So the next thing that I want to talk about in my list of panes here is the HBox and VBox. So HBox and VBox are very, very flexible, much more than you might think when you look at them. So they are very simple in the way that they work. So an HBox works by putting everything horizontally. Horizontally. That's why it's called an HBox, because it's horizontally aligning everything. So let's say that I use an HBox and I put in some buttons. Then the buttons, I put 2 buttons here. Then the first button will go here, the next button will go here, the third button will go here, and the fourth button will go here. So this way it will align everything horizontally like that. And if I put one more button, it will realign everything so that these will be like thinner. So this is just to illustrate it. So normally you could use it in a different situation, but it can be, if I put 4 buttons, I will also have 4 different areas like this. And the reason why they are colored is just to show that they fill out whatever they are inside of, like that. The VBox is the opposite. It will actually fill in something like in the opposite direction, namely vertically. So the VBox will do vertical alignment of everything. So that means that they will stack on top of each other instead of beside each other like this. And this is pretty cool. I'm mentioning both of them because they can actually be used to obtain some pretty awesome results. Because if we want to design something, let's say we want to do something like before, we can actually create a user interface like this, and I can say, let's do HBoxes. So I will just divide them horizontally first like this, and then I can divide them, this one, into vertical boxes, and I can even divide this one, and I can put some content in here, and I can put some content in here, like a text box here and a button here. I can put input field here, checkbox here, and maybe even horizontally put more checkboxes, and this one is checked. This way, I can, in a very flexible way, create a user interface. And a cool feature with that is that we can make it relative. So it means that we can create these boxes so they are not fixed in size. You don't specify for these buttons here where they are. You just say they're going into this HBox. And then they will be put in the middle like this. So that also means that if I take the window from this one and makes it bigger, then all of the HBoxes and VBoxes will automatically resize into the size that we want. And if we take everything inside of the HBoxes, for example, this text field here, or text area here, we can specify that it should fill out the HBox in some way, like there should be some some spacing here and some spacing here and some spacing here and spacing here. And this way we can actually fill this out and it will actually scale with the window. So of course it can be hard to define it so that it also works here with mobile phones, but it's a lot easier because JavaFX will automatically recalculate all of the different things that it needs to recalculate so that it's relative to the size of the screen. It is working a lot better than the AnchorPane for this, where there's no calculation at all. So for most layouts, in my experience, you can do almost anything with HBoxes and VBoxes. And I would actually advise you to try that out because they are simple and they are very easy to use and they scale very well in normal cases. I'm going to show you some examples later. Then there are others as well. So there is the TilePane. This is a very, very specific one. So TilePanes are used for tiles, and the important thing here is that they are of equal size. So if we want to put things in something like a table or something like that, it could be, for example, if we're selling something, let's say we're selling a bicycle here. This is a bicycle. So we're selling a bicycle and we have some sales text, and then there's another picture of a bicycle and some sales text that I want to draw like this. So this way it will have a very clean layout where everything is evenly spaced and sized and something like that. And we can see that if we go, for example, into something like a web page or something where they're selling stuff, we can often get this kind of tile-based layout. For example, on eBay or something like that, we can get this kind of layout where we have like evenly spaced things and it's very calm to look at, very easy to see what we need to find. So TilePanes are for that sole purpose. And maybe if you want to have something like a table or some like table of data, or maybe if you want to set up something like questionnaire or something like that, the TilePane can be very good for that. Then there's also the BorderPane. So if we look at the BorderPane, it looks a bit special. Looks like web pages in the 90s, I would say. So what BorderPane has, it has something called the center. It has something called right, and it has something called left. It has something called top, and it has something called bottom. So the idea behind the BorderPane is that by default, the center one, let's do another color. The center one fills out the entire screen. So the center one will fill out the screen if there is no bottom or right or left or top. So if I don't define anything in the top one or the left one or the bottom one, it just fills out the screen. If I only define the center and the top will fill out all of the others here. If I define center and left and right, it will fill out to the top and to the bottom as well. So this way, it's very easy for something where you would want something like a menu or something like that. So you could define like a menu in the top here. Say we have a menu up here, and over here we have something like an info, something in the yellow part over here. In this one, we remove that, and on the bottom we have some like copyright or whatever they put on. And then we can have a layout like that, and we could even change out the center part here. For example, if we had some content here, we could change that out based on some of the other things if we wanted that. So we can just switch that out and load another FXML file or some other content into that. So the BorderPane is something for things like menus and stuff like that. And it also flows nicely when we resize it. It works pretty well because the center will fill out and the others will be relative to the center as well. But it's often not something we can do with alone, because oftentimes this center piece here will be something that, this center part is often something that consists of other kinds of panes, normally VBoxes and HBoxes, because oftentimes the center part is not just like one big button or something. It will probably be more than that. So the BorderPane is also pretty nice for when you want something like content in the middle and things around that. So then there's the GridPane. The GridPane is a lot more complicated than the other ones because you have to specify how the different things in the grid can be created, but it's kind of like the TilePane. It tiles everything. So if you worked with tables in HTML, it's like that. So you can kind of see here, I'm drawing all of the lines here. Everywhere where there's a line, it's actually divided. So what happens here is that, for example, this bottom one is actually spanning 3 columns. So if I write column 3 here, it spans this column, spans this column, and this column. This one is spanning 2 columns. This one is spanning 1 column, 1 column, 1 column, 1 column. And then we can span rows as well. So we can say this one is spanning 2 rows, this is spanning 1 row, and this one looks like it's spanning 2 rows as well. This is spanning 1, 1, and this one is spanning actually three different rows at the same time. So these are the numbers we need to define. We need to define them, how many rows and in which sequence they are actually placed in here. So this way we can define also something that is very it's very well defined. I think in my experience the GridPane is kind of hard to work with, and it's not something that I think it's very good to work with for most layouts. I very rarely use it. I think it's a lot of work actually, and oftentimes there are better solutions for that, and you can probably imagine you can easily get this with VBox and HBox as well. So it's, and also this doesn't always scale very well. Depends on how you set it up. You can set it up so that it scales well, but not always. Yeah. So then there's another one that I seldomly use, that is the StackPane, and it's kind of made so that you can have a pane on top of another pane or behind. So it's kind of, if you want something in the C direction, if we call this X and we call this direction Y, we want something also to go inside. So we can have multiple layers of layouts here. Maybe we could do like an inline pop-up. Instead of creating a new window, we can kind of create something on top of the others, and we can hide it behind the others, or we could create something like up here. We could have some buttons. Maybe we could have a BorderPane layout and up around this, and up here, if I click this button, it loads this specific pane here. If I click this button, it loads this one, and so forth. So we can kind of use it like that. And I've sometimes seen people creating games actually using this one, because we have often in games, we have multiple layers that needs to pass each other in front or behind to create some kind of depth or something. But definitely these panes are not created for games. But when I'm talking about games, I'm talking about card games or something simple like that. Not games where you need fast-paced action or something. It's not made for that. Then comes the last one. I'll find some cool color for that. That is the flow pane. The FlowPane is easy to use, it scales well, and it's pretty cool when you get the hang of it. So the FlowPane is actually what you see in the Windows Explorer. So if you look here, you can see I have some files here, different files. And you can see that the one called frequent folders here, if I actually resize the window, they will snap into this kind of grid structure. And something like this folder will be with this one. So we could have, like, let's say we have an HBox here. So this is one of the elements of the HBox, and then inside of this, in the left, it's an left of the HBox, there's an image, and in the right there's like a VBox with two different texts inside of it, like labels. So this way we can mix HBoxes and VBoxes and put them together in one, and then put them into a flow pane, and then we can create something which I think will scale really well and it looks pretty cool when we do something like this. So I would definitely recommend, if you need something like this, if you have a library of books or files or anything like that, or could also be that you have something like filtering with different words or something like that. You can have something like this, and this scales perfect also on mobile phones, and you can resize it also, make it smaller and bigger. And so it's a really, really cool kind of pane here. But also it's not that often, not that common I see it used, because it's only for specific cases. But when it's used, it works very, very well. So that's basically it. These are the different types that we have in JavaFX. And I just want to end with saying which ones are the most used. As I said, you can use VBox, HBox for almost everything. These are very, very usable. Oftentimes I see people using an AnchorPane or BorderPane for the top layout. That means the topmost layout. They use that just to get started. Sometimes I see also using a GridPane, but I think it almost always doesn't scale well. I seldomly see the StackPane used, but if you need something to stack with the C part, then you go for that. As I said, the FlowPane is cool, but seldomly used because it's so specific. And the TilePane, I see that used a lot if you want like a lot of order in your program, want an overview of something. It's pretty cool to do that. So that's it for the theoretical part of it. So now I want to show you how you can create these different kinds. And then lastly, I'm going to show also how we can combine multiple. And I might need even to do that along the way because it looks a bit cooler maybe if I combine some of them. So let's see that. Thank you for watching.